Welcome to another episode of the Rugby League Outsiders. In this week's episode, we're going to talk to Richard Egan and Alex Duff of the Dublin Exiles, both involved in the club over there in Ireland and doing great stuff. It's a great episode, so make sure you pay attention. Also, whilst I've got you on the line, I want to remind you that we now run a weekly live broadcast news show. We run it Tuesday night at 8 o'clock every week, where Carl and I share 6 interesting news stories from outside the heartland. So make sure you join us. It's interactive. You can comment. We can share those comments. And we always have a laugh. So, Carl, over to this episode.
That's probably the best place to start, then, if you can give us a little bit of history. I'm interested to know who you played for in Leeds as well. That'd be just interesting to know.
I started out as Hunslet Boys Club, as it was then. It's now Hunslet Club for boys and girls. But that's where I started originally. My best mate, his dad was a coach and used to play at Bradford Northern, and that's where I got into the sport. And we kind of folded it in kind of the under-16s category, and I went and played a bit of rugby union at the time, and then my brother went back playing league for East Leeds, and I went down there as well. So I was at East Leeds, and then I went on a lad's holiday and met a girl from Dublin, and the rest is history. I finished off that.
That sounds
season.
like, sounds like the same story as you, Carl.
Yeah, it's a bit of a common theme, that is, with anybody we speak to outside the heartlands. I think that's generally how rugby league teams have started.
Pretty much, yeah. So when I moved over here, the Dublin Blues was the club. So a guy called Brian Corrigan, an absolute legend of a man, set up rugby league. So he wrote to the RFL years ago, like late 70s, early 80s, saying he was going to try and set up rugby league, and it was pretty much met with a no, we're in charge of rugby league for all the for all of Ireland as well, which obviously wasn't the case. So he set up a club called the Dublin Blues, which I think was 1989 getting going, and that kind of developed, and there was a couple of matches over here, like Leeds played in the Challenge Cup, I think, in mid-90s, and then an Irish team set up and went and played Developing Nations, so they were over in Emerging Nations World Cup, I think it was 95 as well. Yeah. So there was a splattering of players that had got involved in rugby league at that stage, and then the RFL, in conjunction with Brian, set up what was then Ireland Rugby League. So a guy called Nigel Johnson was the development officer. He came over here and just effectively tried to get the game going. So at the time, there was ourselves, there was a team from Churchtown, there was a team Northside Saints and Tala, and we played then against lads that were up in Northern Ireland as well. So there was a few, call them amateur internationals if I'm being nice about it, but it was just lads that had never really played the game, mainly Irish-based guys in the Republic of Ireland against lads that were based up in Northern Ireland as well. So we played a few State of Origin games, which were great crack, and then we played Scotland, say, in an international. I think we played Wales at one stage too. And then the league kind of paused during the year 2000. There wasn't really too much activity. I was actually out at the time. I'd done my collarbone a couple of times at the start of that year. And there wasn't really much activity. And then the guys that were running Ireland Rugby League pretty much went back. And a few guys here at the time, Dave Southern and a few others, set up Rugby League Ireland. And at the time, the Exiles were looking to be formed. A guy called Chris McKenna, an Aussie guy from Penrith, who was living in Ireland, was trying to set up a team. He'd met with Dave and he'd met with a few others, and they decided to put a side together. Originally, he wanted it to be called the Jets, I think, based out of the airport, which is literally where I am here. And he just happened to meet a load of Aussies that were working on construction sites in town, and we ended up setting up in the Phoenix Park. So Phoenix Park is huge. It's the biggest in-city park in Europe, I think. And we were playing on Gaelic football pitches. So Gaelic football pitch is way, way bigger than a rugby pitch. Yeah. So if you got the ball and you were looking up and it was 110 metres, and you didn't want to do that. So we trained and played out of the park to start with. And that was really where the Exiles founded, and it was mainly Aussies, a couple of Kiwis, a couple of English lads. I think we had a South African as well at the time as well, and that was really where we started. So that was 2000.
It must have been quite a high standard then, if you started with people that were already, like a lot of clubs that outside the heartlands, they tend to have like one or two players that have perhaps played before, a coach that's done a bit, and then all fresh players, normally rugby union players. But for you, it was slightly different, so it must have been a decent standard then.
Yeah, I mean, the Exiles at the time, were the outliers in terms of being mainly overseas. The Blues were still the strongest club, and then Cork Bulls were there as well. So Cork won it in 2001 in a very dubious win over ourselves in the final. The worst knock-on decision ever recorded, and we went down with penalties.
You're not bitter about that, are you? The fact they've just brought that up.
You won't think that
24 years later.
Wait till we get to the last game.
Oh, we won't go into that. But yeah, no. So we had some really, really good players involved at that time. As you said, they'd all a lot of pedigree playing league, and then the Blues had a really good compact side, and the Cork Bulls were there and thereabouts. But it was a fairly short season, like it was maybe 6 matches. So we were beaten that year in the grand final in the first year of Rugby League Ireland. And then we pretty much kept that squad together, and it was ourselves and the Blues in the final for the 2001 and 2002, and we were lucky we came out winners in both of those games. So it was really, really good, exciting time for us, really good calibre players with some really high skilled players. But then a lot of guys went back to Australia in 2004, and yeah, it was a completely different side, and we were struggling a little bit with knowledge. We got a load of new players who were union guys, that had joined us from a club called Terranure Rugby Club, which is where we'd become based. And we stayed there for 20 odd years. But yeah, we really hit a different phase then from kind of 2004 till about 2008. And then we started to get back a little bit then. We got a lot more experience coming back in then.
So I just want to bring you in, Alex, and just hear a little bit about how you got involved in rugby league. And, is it something that you've always played? Have you transitioned from a different sport?
Yeah, so I've transitioned from union. So that Terranure where the Exiles are based, that has a school and a club, and the school would be like known as one of the kind of the predominant rugby schools in Leinster. So you kind of would have known what league was, but primarily from like the NRL, you wouldn't really know what was going on in Super League or anything like that. And then when I left and crossed over to the club, I just met a guy just from playing who was, I think he had a stint at the Bears, to be fair, over in Coventry, Aaron Ryan. It was just like, oh, you should go trial for like it was kind of weird how it was done back then. You trialed for Ireland under 19 before you kind of got a club.
Yeah.
That was your introduction. You trialed, you kind of told them where you were from. And then the manager at the time, Paul Cullen, wanted me to go play for Carlow, so I'm from Kildare, Dublin's like here, Carlow's down here. So it was much of a muchness, but I was like based in Dublin for university and stuff. So I was like, no, I'll go play league. And then out of Terranure instead. And then that's when I met Rich, and he was like, you seem to like getting your head taken clean off your shoulders. We'll stick you in the middle, lad.
Is there much sort of stigma involved in Ireland between sort of rugby league and rugby union, like there is a little bit in England, or is it integrated quite well?
Probably more a lack of knowledge, really. You just kind of get told it's that game they play up north, and you only have to be able to count to 5, and it's probably come a bit more relevant now because of all the league coaches that have crossed over into union. A lot of people kind of have more knowledge of it now. But it's not really thought about, really. It's like obviously just kind of, they know it's there, but there's nothing really going on about it. Like,
so what does the sort of league look like in Ireland these days? How many teams do you compete against? What's the structure like at the minute?
Kind of changed drastically over the last 3 years, hasn't it, Rich? It hasn't really been the same year on year.
It's evolved a lot over the 20 odd years since Rugby League Ireland formed. Like, it's generally been kind of 5 or 6 core sides. At one stage, we got the funding from the RFL. So back in 2010, 11, 12, 13, we got funding to employ staff. And we got up to 21 teams in the competition at that stage. But the completion rate dropped significantly as well. So a lot of clubs were just brand new, and 1 year they'd play out of one rugby union club, and then they'd change the name and go to another close by. So even though it got as high as 21, it wasn't really performing really well. So it's kind of dropped back down again to that 5 or 6 men's teams, and they're relatively consistent as well. So there's ourselves, there's another team close by called Longhorn, who are just kind of North Dublin into Meath, Galway Tribesmen over in the west of the country, a team this year up north called Banbridge Broncos, and then Cork Bulls as well. We've had a few other sides that have come and gone. So, but I think the biggest development in the last couple of years has been the start of the Women's Rugby League as well. So I think that was 2020 was the first season. And that's the Exiles have the team that have won it each year. Galway have a team as well. And then this year, Banbridge brought a women's team in as well. So 3 teams. But I think if you were to look and say, could that be a really big growth area for the sport? Definitely could. And I think then we have to move the other way and move into underage as well. So trying to get under 19s and under 16s will be definitely the intent. But there isn't anything operational at this stage. It's really just the senior men's and the 3 women's teams.
Rich, Alex, a question for both of you, really. Obviously, we're at a point in the season where people are kind of scrambling around trying to get new players in, and recruitment is massive, as well as getting all the sponsorship and all that kind of stuff. What are you doing to sort of bring in new players and grow the game over there?
So I used to, before I moved to transfer here, I used to run part of the social media with the club. And to be fair, you'll find, so like a lot of us will come or would have come from a union club. So that's kind of the word of mouth is huge there. You kind of, it used to be kind of sold as you want to stay fit over the summer, come down and play some league, and then you find a lot of boys come down and play it and then kind of start to prefer it or want to keep it going. But you'd be surprised, like even I remember when I used to run the Instagram, the amount of random messages you would get where it would be something like, I've just seen, like, say, Wigan v Saints was on Sky and I watched it for 5 minutes and I actually really like this. Can I come try it out? Yeah. And then I think the club's always been really open. Like it's never kind of tried to recruit anyone based on like what ability they've come from another sport. Like you could have someone come, for example, and say, oh, I played like semi-pro union or something like that. I want to come down and give it a go. Or you could have a guy going, I've never played rugby or any sport, but I really want to play, and the club will get you down and try to accommodate you in some way. So yeah, that's pretty much it, Richard, isn't it?
Yeah, and again, it shows the evolution of the side. When I first came, it was all Aussies and Kiwis in the bars in town that were just meeting other Aussies and Kiwis that are working on sites and dragging them down. We actually lost 2 players, 2 brilliant players in the first season because they came down for training and they went to the wrong pitch. And the Blues saw them walking along, a big Samoan lad and a big second rower who played pretty much NRL, and they were walking through the park and the 2 lads, oh, you're coming here for a footy training? And they came over. So back then it was all that kind of Aussie pubs, and then it kind of transitioned when we moved into Terranure. It was really guys connected with the club. And then it's kind of evolved now, as Alex says, it's friends of friends and people that have seen it randomly. So it is definitely changed from being a team of Exiles only to being predominantly an Irish-based team with a few splatterings of accents like my own.
Rich, just another question as well. So, I mean, what's exciting in Rugby League Ireland at the minute, as you head into the new season?
Yeah, from the RLI side for this season, I probably are close enough to know that. I think the women's team is the bit that I'm most excited about because they've appointed a new coach there now. So when it started, we had a team that was based over in Wigan, a guy that he actually played in the Irish team with me in 2004, a guy called John Wally. And that period has finished and they've appointed a new guy who's actually the Exiles head coach, Matt Kennison. So really, really good coach. He's an Aussie lad, so he's a real typical mouthy halfback, but he's brilliant coach. And I'm looking forward to him bringing somewhat new to the women's side and hopefully getting more and more players for the Exiles, but also for the national side as well.
Alex, just over to you. You've represented Ireland yourself, haven't you? Just tell me a little bit what it was like playing for sort of the national side. Listen, kind of anyone you've ever asked, any domestic Irish lad you've asked, they'll tell you the same thing, that like we kind of grow up wanting to wear a green jersey, like in just to represent Ireland. Like if
if Ireland are going well in football, we'll all want to play football for Ireland. If there's someone in Wimbledon from Ireland, we'll all have extension leads across 2 wheelie bins playing tennis. So the first taste I would have got was that under-19s. That under-19s kind of camp that was kind of in between the European Championships. So it's kind of when a lot of lads get a chance to kind of get blooded because it's for kind of friendlies as such. So I remember my first one was Scotland away in this little town called Livingston.
I know.
And like they had no idea what rugby league was either. But they heard Scotland were like the Scottish team were playing, and this like rugby union ground all of a sudden with like this stand was packed out, and it was amazing. And we got to win that day. Kind of been fortunate enough then to get selected for 2 student teams as well. So we've played 1 home tournament in Galway, and then just from the previous one there in Wales in Pontypridd. Then there's been fortunate enough to be picked for a few of the A games as well. So I'd say it's the best feeling in the world. Like everything you want to do is put on that green jersey and run out alongside your mates. And then some of the memories you make, like some of the friends you make for life. Like I know you've had Adam Bates on from Sherwood, so I'd be real close with him and the likes of Glenn Holt and a few other boys as well. So yeah, no, it's everything you want to do really.
Perfect. So what are your sort of ambitions for this year then?
If I'm lucky enough, get selected for the students 4 nations in England. It's my last chance of giving it a go. So it's kind of first year I played, we finished 3rd. Last year we finished 2nd. So there's only really one place we can finish now left. So hopefully all going well. So I'd like to be involved again, like with the A side or whatever shape that takes this year. And then obviously with the Exiles, internally, you always say you want to go one better than the previous year. So we got to a semi-final last year. So we probably owe it to the likes of Matty, our coach, and then the backroom staff as well, that like the facilities and stuff that we have, we need to kind of be back in finals, contesting for it. Like, so yeah, that's kind of the internal goals anyway.
Well, you mentioned Matty, the coach. Is there any other personalities at the club that you'd kind of like to mention or deserve a little bit of tip of the hat and a thank you online?
Oh, there's so many. How long have you got? Of course. So you got to shout out the likes of Paul BK and Leo Kelly. Like Leo set this up for us through talking to yourselves. BK's kind of dealt with it behind the scenes, but he's always kind of there to do literally anything. If you told him if you told him there was a game in Banbridge and that there was a lad from Cork who would play for us, he'd drive down, get him, bring him back. The likes of like the Richie Clean and Diane, who kind of deal with the player side of things, and then I suppose from the women's side too, it's probably harder working boys are Columba Kelly and Big Dino, who will, if you come down and train once for the women's team, will become your best friend and share all of your posts on social media.
That's a really, really good backroom. I have to say that the people doing the work in the background, it's been brilliant. Just a really tight little group of maybe 7 or 8 people just getting through a huge amount of work. And it's like that. It's like that in all clubs, but they do a great job.
Yeah, I think you need people like that, don't you? You mentioned the guy that would drive, however far, it didn't matter, to go and pick a player up. I mean, it's that kind of stuff that keeps the sport alive at grassroots, and level. So we definitely need them. So yeah, plenty of names to talk about. So if we could just talk a little bit about you imagine the brand of the Exiles. I mean, what kind of values do you hold close as a club, and do you try and promote amongst the playing group?
I think the main one is just everyone gets a chance. As Alex said, it's easy to bring in players that have performed at a high level in maybe union. The key thing is everyone comes down, gets a go. There's a place for everyone. We have had a second team in the last couple of seasons, and then before that, you were allowed rolling subs as well. So it's a great opportunity. People come down, give it their all, and you get to play in great matches as well. And there'll always be a place as well on the field. So I think that's at the heart of it. That's what the Exiles is about. It's about coming down and enjoying it. And we've always, ever since the very founding days, it didn't matter what level you'd had people come down and be world beaters, and people come down and never even knew the game. And it's just about coming down, being a part of the Exiles, and like we're not based in a particular rugby union club or whatever. You don't have your own grounds and facilities, but wherever we go, the bar is well and truly drunk dry as many Saturdays as we can, and it's just a great group of people coming down and just enjoying learning something new. And there's probably as much done out off the field as there is on it.
Guys, is there anything else we should have asked you before we sort of wrap up? Is there anything that you wanted to mention that we haven't covered?
For me, I think the key bit is really where does the game go in Ireland? I think that's, as an English person who's over here and dedicated a lot of time, I think the growth of the sport is really important, and having people see that there's a pathway through. And it's great that Alex is here. Alex has had an opportunity to go. He's had trials with scholars. He's played rep matches. He's been over to France. And there's been loads of players before that who've gone over, lads who've gone over to play in, some lads have gone over to play pro in Oldham and Sheffield and places like that. And the real thing is, can you develop a sport in another country? And having players come through and see that, right, it's only a stepping stone. You can play international rugby for Ireland, international rugby league for Ireland, if you give it a go. And I think the more opportunities for players that come through the ranks here, the better it is for the game. We've always had this: is it performance? In which case, you can pick a Luke Carey, or you can pick an NRL or a Super League side, and that gives much more competitive against Tier 1 nations. Or do you go for development and say, right, you know what? We'll pick a focus on growing the game over a longer period of time. That's always the challenge for a sport in a non-traditional heartland like here. And, there's pros and cons to both sides. Everyone that's put on an Irish jersey is given 100% on the field, and then you're looking and going, right, can we grow a sport? Ireland is full of brilliant rugby players. GAA players lend themselves so well to becoming rugby league players. Rugby union players is such a pool of players who want to give rugby a go and then don't go on to be professional, that could go into rugby league as well. So the opportunity here is huge, but with that you have to sacrifice sometimes the performance and go for growth. And I'd be a big fan of that approach, and hopefully that's the way it goes, and we see an Irish team in the future and a competition here that's really solid.
Just last question from me, from either of you. Like, what are your biggest challenges out there? Sort of, playing this game traditionally from northern parts of England, that and you'd be playing that over in Ireland.
I definitely think. I suppose you wouldn't really think of it, kind of how it's worked, but we're probably still in a bit of a COVID kind of hangover. And what I mean by that is the year the boys, I was away, but the years the boys won the final and got to Challenge Cup, that landed it smack bang in the middle of what the union season would be over here. And I suppose when we got the first round against Hammersmith, we were kind of lucky that it fell in the break. But the second round against Oral, our squad was nearly decimated just because of the caliber of player we had that year. But it meant that a lot of boys were backing up and doing a 12-month or a 11-month season. And lads kind of turn around and wonder when they're going to get that break. So that's we're probably still kind of recovering, definitely from the men's side, still recovering a bit from that, of getting a few boys back who kind of wanted to travel and take breaks. But I think the women's side is the kind of the opposite of that, where it's shown in the last few years that the standard of player we get coming through is like lends themselves to league. Like, they have been the trendsetters in the country in the comp the last few years, winning it. But they also, a number of them, like the Amy O'Neill, Tammy Breen, they went on to play for Ireland. And then we have Maddie and Danny, who are a Canadian halfback and a Canadian second row, who just came over this year and played for us. So they're the example we could follow. But that's kind of the challenge we're facing at the moment, I would say.
And consistency is the other bit I was going to say. It's very difficult to get people committing to a season when it's quite unpredictable and quite short, and you're not certain, is there definitely 8 fixtures and it's definitely these weeks. So I think the stability side of it comes by having more focus on the domestic competition. And with that, then gives the opportunities for more rep stuff as well. So I think stability at the league, and then as Alex said there, for the other stuff. A big shout out to Hammersmith. So they are effectively like the Exiles as a side. When we went down there, it's all Aussies and Kiwis living in London having a great time, and it was a brilliant weekend away. And then we went up to Orrell. That was a brilliant weekend, but not a great result. But they were a good set of lads as well.
Lads, we're going to kind of wrap it up there. I've got to say, if Rugby League in Ireland, if you two are a representation of the people involved in Rugby League in Ireland, I truly believe it's in great hands. You know what I mean? I think it's going to go from strength to strength. So it's been, an absolute pleasure to chat to you and really interesting listening to you all. To finish off with, Carl.
No, I'll echo what Craig says. You both seem incredibly passionate about the sport. You're doing everything you can over there to really drive it, and I applaud you for everything you're doing. And everything I see about Ireland Rugby League at the minute, it appears to be on the up. So best of luck to you, and I'm going to keep an eye on your fixtures and just keep an eye on how the season goes this year. And please sort of come back to us later on in the season and give us an update on how Irish Rugby League is going.
Brilliant. No, thanks for this opportunity as well. It's great to get any kind of exposure for the sport.
Yeah, cheers for having us on, especially considering half the boys say have a face mask radio. So if this footage makes it out, I'll be happy.
Cheers, lads. Thanks for coming on, mate. Cheers later.
All right. Take it easy. Be good.
Cheers, man. Bye. Bye.
That's the final whistle for this week's episode of the Rugby League Outsiders. We hope you've enjoyed it. Don't forget to follow us on social media and share this podcast with your friends. And as always, if you have a story to tell, a club to plug, or a player that deserves recognition, we want to hear from you. So until next time on the Rugby League Outsiders, take care.